Good day, everybody. WoofDriver coming at you live once again from Hanover, Maryland, New Style Independent Studios. And I'm out of, we're Hanover, Pennsylvania. I'm sorry, I'm out of Maryland, just to let you know. And behind me or above me, wherever you're watching this, I've got the screen playing from yesterday's WoofDriver on Tour adventure, where we were on the Atlantic County Trail. That's in New Jersey, about 20 minutes, 25 minutes out of Atlantic City. And you'll notice I'm running the dogs in an unfamiliar format. I've only done this way on TV where I've documented it, or on social media, where we're actually on running the dogs on the side on one of my bikes I call the Speed Shark. The purpose of this is to entertain the dogs, give them another way to run, to be challenged. Good for their, I talk about this CrossFit exercise, and good for using different muscles and different psychological enrichment. And I say this because they're wearing different harnesses and they're running in a different position. This way they can actually use, the harness covers more of their body. This is more of what someone might use for what they call joring sports or dog powered sports, because they get more range of motion and they can use more of their body to pull and to run and to do what dogs do, what sled dogs do, etc. And when I say dogs, I mean all dogs can do this in some capacity. They don't need to be sled dogs. But since these are huskies, more associated with sled dogs, and they were the original sled dog, not now, there's all kinds of mixes they do to get the most performance-wise sled dog, if you will. But with huskies, it's in their traits, in their blood. And a lot of people say to me, well, you know, they don't come out of the womb ready to get on a sled. No, they don't, but they've got all the raw ingredients. We just sometimes, not even all the time, need to show them how to do it, because sometimes you'll hook them up and they'll just go. And but of course, some training is required really to condition them, even if they've got all the ability and you don't need to train them because they're just go-getters. Some dogs will do it naturally. You still need to condition them because we don't want to give them too much too soon. Otherwise, just like a human, they could injure themselves. We can injure ourselves doing too much too quick. So we always want to go gradual. This trail, now, a couple reasons with the Speed Shark and training for speed purposes, what we call in the WoofDriver world dog fartlek. And I know it sounds weird, but it's I think it's Danish or Norwegian terminology for humans doing speed training, actually. So with the speed training, and we're not going very fast here, so I was actually hoping to go faster, but before I go on what I call WoofDriver on Tour, if you're not familiar with me, I travel pretty much the East Coast of the United States to adventure with my dogs. I call it adventure mush because it's not about any competition, even though I'm talking about speed here. It's really about entertainment and about psychological and physical enrichment for the dogs. And because I'm dealing with the husky, very intelligent breed, and because of a lot of the hereditary composure, if you will, they need to kind of be constantly challenged or they get bored quickly. And that's why people get these breeds, and that a lot of times they'll escape their environment, whether it's out of a kennel, out of a crate, or out of a yard, or out of their house, etc. By the way, please feel free to comment on anything I'm talking about, comments, questions, shout outs, etc. So we've got one now. So I'm going to turn around, and from Haley Stevens. Good morning, everyone. Haley, great to see you. Thanks so much for the comments. And I always appreciate your tuning in and all over what I'm doing. I really appreciate that with your input and your questions, comments, and all that good stuff. Thank you so much. So, and I know a lot of people here, I've tried not to be too redundant because I go over stuff a lot, and some of the stuff you hear me say, I know I've touched on it before, but I'm not reading from any script or anything. So you might have heard it before, but I'm going to say it probably from a different perspective, even though I've said it a million times before. There's always a different way of explaining things. And because I'm technically dyslexic, so you might hear something that I neglected to say before or didn't say it in a way you might understand it. We've got another comment here. Cheryl, great to see you, Cheryl. Nice setup on this one. No boredom for the girls or viewers. Carry on. Thanks so much. And yes, my most important aspect is to keep those dogs entertained. And I say entertained because if they, to really challenge these dogs, not all Huskies, but the ones that have the true sled dog lineage in their blood, I would have to run so many miles. I couldn't do it. And it would have to be in really unfathomable conditions, if you will. You can see, if you go on social media, obviously you're seeing me. If you see professional mushers, I don't consider myself a professional musher. I'm a recreational hobbyist musher. But if you go out there and you see the people that are competing in the Iditarod and doing other really intense sled dog sports, this is like the Cadillac version. This is the pampered version, if you will. They're out in conditions. Huskies are built for it. They're built for some of Earth's most challenging condition, Mother Nature's most challenging conditions, from the cold and the rough terrain to hauling lots of weight over these really intense conditions that I couldn't even walk over. That's what they're doing. That's what they're designed to do in the coldest parts of the world. So that's what they're doing. We're having fun, basically. So it's kind of cool because they're they're working dogs, but they're also living the pet kind of life. So we got another comment here. It's Karen, great to see you, Karen. Karen says, could you go over the dog's diet? Great question. Thank you so much, Karen, for asking that. So I feed my dogs, and I don't get too opinionated on this because everybody, whatever works for you, and my veterinarian would always say this to me, I feed my dogs a raw frozen diet. So I know for some people create their own diet using the same what I'm talking about, raw foods, basically. And there's a real art to that. I used to do that. Okay. I did that for a couple of years, which is very intense, very labor intense, I should say, and requires a lot of knowledge because you want to make sure you're getting a complete diet. And a lot of times it takes some supplements along with foods that we buy at the grocery store, buy at the butcher, and try to get the right combination to give the dog the most complete balanced diet. For me, it became a big challenge, a lot of work, and there wasn't enough available knowledge from sources that I trusted to make sure I was giving the dog the most complete balanced diet. So what happened is you go to the veterinarian. Sometimes they can do blood work to check for certain levels. Sometimes you can see it on the dog, their fur, their hair, how their nails, whatever, how everything looks, their teeth, to kind of judge, am I giving the dog the most complete diet? Or am I lacking something? But sometimes it might not show up for years. And it might be a deficiency that took its toll on the dog. And just like with humans, but we have more ways to monitor it. And there's more available information because humans are constantly studied. Not so much dogs. I mean, they are, and there's always new ideas and new ways coming out. But they're further down the totem pole, for lack of a better description here, than a human. So human, you're always going to get the latest, not always the greatest, but the latest. But with the dogs, I was concerned, and also the amount of effort it took to prepare this diet because dogs need to, I guess maybe all creatures need to have their foods in certain ways. Otherwise, they might not get the biological availability, they call it. So, for instance, they used to talk about a dog gets a lot of the vegetable matter it eats from contents of, it sounds terrible, another animal's stomach. So, for instance, a deer. So if they're gonna eat in the stomach, it's been digested and processed. So processed is the wrong word, but it's been digested and biologically available in a way that the dogs can eat that, and they'll get the benefit of the cells and everything that is presented to them that they're getting access to. So the closest thing you could do to that is use a juicer. And instead of giving the dogs the juice, you give them the pulp. And that means you give them the material that's been crushed up, juiced, etc., but not the juice. And that would make that material available to the dogs, biologically available, and they could digest it and their system could process it. Whereas if you give a dog a carrot, for instance, and this may or may not be true today, I haven't kept up on it, but you give a dog a carrot, eats the carrot, most of the time it's not necessarily going to hurt the dog, gives something to chew on, but they're not going to get all the biological or the bioavailable nutrients that they would if it was pulverized and the cells were broken down in that carrot. Then when they eat it, and it would be, again, more of a pulp, more of what comes out of a food processor or a juicer, then that would be biologically or bio available to them to process properly so they could get the advantages of those nutrients. So if that makes sense. I'm going to take one more question, but I'm going to continue on this topic, Karen. So BUVD, I'm sorry, BUVD, I know I'm saying that wrong. I'm sorry. My husky has a half day, 1.5 days per 2 weeks when he's not eating. Do you know if it's common? Okay. That good diet's a great topic to talk about. And I'll go back to what I'm feeding my huskies, but to let you know, sometimes huskies are very finicky eaters. They can be. And if they don't get the exercise or they're not using all the food we feed them, they'll fast sometimes. Fast themselves. They'll eat one day, won't eat the next day, etc. Fasting is, I used to fast some of my huskies. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's best to find a balance where they'll eat the same amount every day, and we monitor their weight, make sure that's agreeing with them. Now, sometimes they'll turn this food away if they don't have all the other food out of their system, or they haven't burned enough calories, so they're not as the hunger isn't there. So that exercise to make sure, and that's why I do what I do, that exercise is important to burn the calories and get them hungry to eat every day. And if I'm going to do a video sometime, I might have done it in the past, showing how excited my dogs are to eat every day. I mean, you think if I've got a lot of wood surrounding me, but if my neighbors heard my dogs, they would call the police because they go bonkers at feeding time. I mean, off the wall. And I love it because it's a sign that they're looking forward to their meal. They've burned their proper calories and they want to eat. But that being said, still, depending on different issues with huskies, with all dogs, health-related issues, heat cycles, etc., it can skew their appetite. It's always best if this is happening on a fairly regular basis. Of course, always check with your veterinarian, maybe do blood work, maybe ask their opinion, etc. But maybe you're feeding the dog too much. Now, again, it depends on the weight of your dog. It depends on their activity level, like I talked about. But dogs in general, huskies for sure, will binge. So if I feed my dogs, they usually tell you cup-wise, give your dog a cup and a half, 2 cups, depending on the weight, whatever. I feed my dogs poundage-wise. I just weigh the food because it's easier, and that's what I've been known to do because I used to do all this raw feeding where I used to prepare it myself, and I weighed everything. So I, for instance, feed my dogs mostly on an average 1.25 pounds a day. I don't know what that equates to cup-wise because, again, I'm using frozen foods, and some of them are patties, and some of them are nuggets, so they're going to equate differently measuring in a cup. But if I would give my dogs, some of them would eat 2 pounds. Some of them might eat 2.5 or 3 pounds, be too much for them. But the next day, they might not eat for a day or 2. So I'm giving them too much. Now, depending on the kind of work we do, they might burn that food off quicker and be ready to eat the next day. So if you can find the right amount that keeps your dog at a good weight and they'll eat every day, that would be the optimal desired result. So I'll touch back on that, but I want to get to the raw food because I started on that and Karen had asked the question. So I feed the raw frozen diet, and what I do now, so I got out of preparing it myself because of the concerns, the time it took me to do it, and back in my mind, well, if I'm missing something and I don't know it for 5 years and the dog's got some kind of deficiency, it might be hard to repair it. So I started going to, had just come around where raw foods were getting big. So a couple companies started making them commercially available. And at the time, it looked like a really good option for me. So I started feeding commercially available raw frozen diets. So for now I believe you can go to a Petco or PetSmart and they have a raw frozen section. Now there's different qualities of this raw frozen food. At the time I was doing it, there wasn't as many choices. I used my knowledge. I consulted some with my veterinarian, and they don't know everything. There's veterinarians that specialize in nutrition. And by the way, the person that would just ask me the comment, you can try to find a nutritionalist veterinarian that could better maybe help you with getting the dog to eat daily, plus some of the other stuff I was saying. But with the raw frozen diet, so there's different brands out there. What I do with that now is I go in a lot of different directions because, again, I don't think there's enough available knowledge out there to know exactly what is great and what is not. And it varies from dog to dog like it does from human to human. So I think one of the most valuable tools we can use is because there's so many different foods out there now, raw, I'm talking, different proteins. So I'll do rabbit, I'll do duck. And duck, these all have different nutrients. They're different proteins, different animals, etc. I'll do pork, beef, chicken, almost every available protein, even fish, a lot of fish stuff, salmon, whitefish, pollock, and these are all frozen foods. I used to go to the grocery store. I used to go to Costco. I used to get Sam's Club and get a salmon and feed it to my dogs. Just cut it up, just cut it in half because they used to have these big salmon fillets. They weren't even fillets. They were the salmon was filleted, but it was the whole half a fish. And I'd cut it up and give it to each dog the appropriate weight I was feeding it. But I think fish is a big, healthy part. Sometimes, so my dogs, you come in at any time and your mind might be blown because you come in and I'm feeding it the salmon the one day, the rabbit the next day, the beef the next day. I try to do a different protein every day. I actually have, believe it or not, a schedule that tells me every day what to feed them that I made up myself and see how the dogs react to it. Now, these diets I'm feeding them are complete frozen balanced diets. So it's supposed to have everything in it that's important to the dog's health. I do these different proteins because they get different ingredients, different, of course, vitamins, nutrients, etc., from each protein, as well as some of these foods, of course, have other essential ingredients that they say completes the diet for the dog. So I don't trust any of these companies just because I do look on different forums and I talk to some of the local pet store owners that sell the frozen foods to find out their opinion, recalls, all kinds of information I can about the foods to make sure I'm getting the highest quality. But because I don't trust any particular brand, I rotate the brands too. So Northwest Naturals, I'll use some of their proteins. Steve's Frozen Foods, some of their proteins. There's a local company here, Canine Cravens. I'll use some of their proteins. There's Raw Instinct. There's Green Juju, it's called actually. And again, reading about it, you're always going to have negativity. I mean, it's like looking at an Amazon review. There's always someone that got a defunct product, something happened, whatever. So it's not sometimes the individual reviews, it's just the congruency of them all. But feeding them this array of different proteins, sometimes it's hard. I haven't run into this problem, though. I'm sure sometimes, especially adjusting to this, getting dogs off a kibble and going to a raw frozen diet is a big adjustment for the dog. Sometimes it can take weeks to just acclimate them to it. You feed a little of the, you wean them off of it, basically. And that will prevent them or help them make the transition. They're going to have an upset stomach. They're going to maybe diarrhea, maybe, could be even throw up. So, and some of the proteins might not work for the certain dogs, and dogs have allergies. So there's all kinds of considerations to keep your eye on, especially if you're doing something like I do. I noticed with one of my dogs doing all these different proteins, some of the ones I'll try, like for instance, there was one brand, I think it was Small Batch, it's called, and I'm don't quote me on this, but I'm recalling it was Small Batch. I know it was the duck protein. It made the dog to have diarrhea or throw up. I think I can't remember what it was. One of those. It upset their stomach. So what I did was, because duck can be really rich, and what I did was I didn't totally give up. The next time I fed the dog that in my rotation duck from that manufacturer, that producer, I went to 0.25% of that. So I went to 25% duck, and then I gave it something I knew would be easier for it to digest, another protein. And then I went up to 50% when the stomach was holding it, went up to 75. And finally I went to 100%, and the dog acclimated or adjusted to that protein. I feel it's important enough to get that protein in for the dog that I wanted to see if I could do it slowly and acclimate to that protein. So that's worked. There was another protein. She was there's another brand called Tucker's, and they put pumpkin in their food. They put they'll do like 3 proteins. It's like, well, sorry, 2 proteins. I think it's pork, bison, and I think and then it has pumpkin. Almost all their foods have pumpkin, I believe. And that pumpkin is usually settling on their stomach. And I'm thinking they mix the different proteins and put the pumpkin in so it keeps the stomach settled. Well, that didn't agree with that dog either. So again, going on a slow approach, getting her used to that combination, that Tucker's formula, and then eventually trying to do 100%. Because again, I think the rotation of the proteins, the rotation of the different producers, different manufacturers, can be really beneficial to the dogs. So I'm going off a little bit of tangent. I apologize, Karen, but and everyone watch it. So if you choose, and some people do, there's freeze dried, which they say is very good. It's just really expensive. But if you're feeding one dog, I'm feeding 5 dogs because I have the little dog who eats frozen foods too. And the little dog's Chinese crested, a 14-pound Chinese crested, and then all the big huskies. And the smaller dog, by the way, I feed them all frozen. It's actually, I don't thaw it. So that is usually in nuggets, some patty forms, and there's some what I call chubs. They're rolls essentially. The rolls are really thick. They're 1 pound rolls, which are small actually, but they're still thick. I'll let those defrost for half hour, 45 minutes, sometimes an hour to get a little softer. I just worry. I'm an overcautious guy. I just worry when they're really hungry, they could go a little hard on it and possibly hurt their teeth because that is a thick roll. And but I also believe, I know I'm getting carried away here, but I'm an intense kind of guy and I go to the extremes, that different textures keep the dogs entertained to eat more different foods. And we were just talking about one of the huskies. Someone was telling me that I read the question, was very picky and not eating every day. So again, enticing them with different foods, textures. So some of these frozen foods come in almost less than a kibble size, which some dogs might inhale. So it might not be for everybody. My dogs don't. So I can give them the real small, and then I can give them more of a kibble size sometimes, and then I can give them a patty, and then I can give them primal. I use primal a lot. That is a cube kind of texture or formula, or cube texture of food. They're actually manufactured in cube size, about 3-inch by 2-inch, something like that. And finally, I can give them the different, what I talked about, the rolls. So we've got a question here. I'm going to take this in between all this good stuff. So this is from the dog BSS 9321. Man, enjoying all this info. Do you have any training video series I can take a look at? The info is priceless. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. A few people have asked for a training series. I'm working on it. So stay tuned on that. I really appreciate that. The kind words and your interest. And I'm going to go back to more of the food stuff. So just we can make this whole show about it because it's really interesting and fascinating to me. And one of my happiest moments is feeding my dogs, because I feel like I'm giving them nothing but this best of nutrition, and they're so happy to eat it. And because of this rotation of formulas and proteins, different manufacturers and proteins, and doing all the different textures and everything. It's exciting to them. It's like me going to the finest steak restaurant and eating the best steak they got. I'm like, yeah, I get overly excited. I like to eat good food, and I guess that's why I'm doing for the dogs. I'm living vicariously through them. No, but I really feel like it's the best I can do for them. So I was saying that if you don't want to go, I know it's an expense to feed them frozen. There are some really good brands that are, they're definitely more than kibble, but they're still a nice happy medium. Like Steve's is one of them. Steve's frozen foods. I really feel that's a good food. And I believe there's goat's milk in that food. And it just seems to be a well-rounded good food. Primal, too, I like. And there might be people out there watching this and know a lot about these frozen foods. Please chime in if you do. But if you can't do the frozen, and I'm not saying it's the end-all, be-all for everything, because, again, my veterinarian would always say to me, if it's working for you, it seems to be good. They're doing the checkups on my dog. They're liking what they're seeing. I'm monitoring my dogs, especially showing sometimes in the hair loss, bald spots, teeth, breath, and also when they're going to the bathroom, how they're expelling from their body, schedule wise, etc. These are all telltale signs of how the diet is faring in the dog. So if we keep our eyes open for that and stay in good touch with the veterinarian and ask them questions that might seem basic to us, but can refer to the veterinarian might have a different insight, especially if you can get a nutritionalist veterinarian. There's veterinarians that specialize in rehab and fitness. You can talk to them about dogs' exercise levels, etc. You can really get a lot of information. Is there another question, Rod? No. Okay. So I wanted to stress, though, that I'm not saying the raw diet is the end all be all. It's worked well for me, but there are other avenues if you choose not to go that way. Some people, again, you might choose to make your own raw diet. Some people will cook their foods for their dogs. I don't have as much experience with that. I believe that we cook some of the nutrients out. Could be wrong. I don't know. Again, you have to really research this and study it. And some people might just go to kibble. So research for you, affordability wise, and what works for you. But the kibble, to me, I've done that for years with some of my first generation dogs. And I read a book that a friend of mine's wife was into dog nutrition, and because she was a big Schutzen is protection work for dogs. It's German protection, a whole German protection series, and most military and police dogs are trained that way. And she was always looking for the best for her dogs. And she had a book written by Dr. Ian Billinghurst. I believe he's Australian. And he talked about, he was one of the founders, I guess, of the BARF diet. BARF is bones and raw foods. That's what it stands for. And he wrote a book, and wow, he got me off of kibble real quickly reading that book that she had recommended. And that's where I got into making my own diet and everything. It's evolved since then. I think a lot of maybe veterinarians, a lot of people, because some veterinarians, I believe, are against raw diet. I think they're coming around to it now. I'm not sure, but depends on who you talk to. But he just turned my whole knowledge around, my whole world around. And a big gripe with kibble is that it's heated at a high process, and the way it's produced, a lot of the readily available nutrients are neutralized. They're cooked out of it, essentially, so the dog's not going to get that. And they also contain a lot of wheat and a lot of products that are fillers for the dogs that can put weight on them, but not creating the proper nutrients. So, and again, I'm not an expert on this. I just do it for my dogs, and this is the knowledge I'm sharing with you. Please always check with your veterinarian to maybe find the best diet for your dog, the best solution. And you might have a good diet. I'm not going to say bad about any diet. I'm just sharing knowledge here. Freeze dried, as dogs get older, though, they can get pickier too, and they're usually less active, so they're burning less calories, and we're trying sometimes to keep weight on them. So it becomes, I've had this happen with some of my huskies. It becomes finding out what they like, even though sometimes it's not the best nutrition choice. Sometimes we're limited because they might have liver issues and other health issues that we have to beware, be careful of some foods or the way it's produced. And that's where a nutritionalist veterinarian can really help. They can create diets that will work around health issues, etc. But being the diet's a really important aspect for the dogs, and being, I feel, as creative as the dog will let you be with healthy nutrients is going to give it the most varied and well-rounded diet. So that's my 2 cents on that for what it's worth. I will do some videos though. I've done a few, and you can go to I believe I've made up a URL. I feed BARF.com, and you'll see a little bit more insight than maybe what I'm saying here, or at least presented a different way. And we're going to look Gathu 02321. Loving this. Thanks so much. I really appreciate that. And I just love that I can share it here, and everyone to understand that every dog is also different. So I want to share this knowledge. What works for me is not always going to work for you. So I do want to stress that. But I'm having a lot of fun with these varied proteins and these varied manufacturers or food producers, because I just feel like the dogs are want to eat so much and are just enjoying their diet. Keep in mind, though, the physical activity I do with the dogs stimulates their appetite, because it causes them to go to the bathroom more, the activity. So their stomach's going to empty more frequently, and they're going to burn more calories. So they're going to be hungry. So I could probably feed them the same thing every day. And because of the physical fitness regimen I do with them, they'd still be very excited to eat, but they never know what they're getting. They're always like, well, what's up, Dad? And there's not much they've turned down, believe it or not. I've just had the instances with the upset stomach that I've talked about, and that was only on one dog. So a lot of times you'll go to change your dog's diet and switch them from one protein to the next, and we do it gradually, usually to keep the stomach as stable as possible. But if you saw me, I'll feed venison, again, commercially raw venison from Primal. They make one. I think Stella's makes one, Stella and Chewy's. But I'll go venison, I'll go chicken, I'll go the salmon I talked about, or whitefish, I'll go beef, do all kinds of stuff. So really interesting. I love talking about it. I love hearing other people's experiences. So don't be shy. I do think most of the proteins, again, depending on allergies and depending on the dog's stomach, I think they can adapt to a lot of these different proteins. And I think the different proteins can give them benefits that they can't get in just by a single or using 2 or 3 different proteins. I think the whole wide array can really help. So that's how we do it here in WoofDriver Land. Is my video still going? So I wanted to tell you more about the video too. The harnesses I'm using, people ask me, these are called Free Motion, and they're made by Nonstop Dogwear. So Nonstop Dogwear, I believe, is a European company, and they have a distributorship here in the United States. So if you order them, if you're in the United States watching this, you can order them and usually get them in a couple days. So they're a real high-end harness, and they produce a few different variations. Their most famous one, I believe, is the one you see on the dogs now, called Free Motion. Excuse me. And that's used more for dog joring sports. And what I'm doing here, as the camera turned away, is more of a joring sport. The bike I'm using, called the Speed Shark, they can actually pull this bike, and they can get more, as I talked about, the harness. Different harnesses give the dogs different abilities and use their muscles in different ways. So these harnesses are giving them more freedom and range of motion. So hence Free Motion. That's why they call them that. So that gives them more ability to pull and to run at higher speeds. So by the way, this trail is paved because the bike rolls best on the pavement, and the dogs do good with that pavement in their regiment of activities because it keeps their pads. I know, and I talk about this many a times, but it keeps their pads really well conditioned. Too much of anything is a bad thing, so we don't do pavement all the time. I try to get at least one pavement workout in every week or every 2 weeks for sure, but try not to run it too much. If we run it a couple times back to back, it's okay. We just want to pay attention because sometimes as the dogs get tired, they can lift their legs. They don't lift their legs as high and they can wear their claws more on a hard surface. And as they do that, they can hit their bloodline. So it looks like, God forbid, the dog was, shot or something, but it's just bleeding a lot because it hits that bloodline. So you want to avoid that. So if you have to always gradually introduce your dog to different running surfaces, pavement especially, what we would do is use booties. If you have to do a consistent diet, for lack of a better description, of pavement or asphalt or hard surfaces, smooth surfaces like that, then we would actually use booties more. I don't love booties. They're a necessary evil sometimes just because the dogs aren't getting full contact with the ground. They can't use their claws. They can't use their pads to grip, their claws to grip their paws. So they lose that ability, so they can't dig in. Even on asphalt, they can dig in some. Of course, they're not going to penetrate it, but they can get better traction. So I've had dogs actually slide in booties. So we're taking a break here. As you see, my co-pilot is almost always with me. He's in the bike ahead there, and now we're moving back on the trail. People ask me this: what happens if you get a tired dog? Well, my rule of thumb is never go faster than your slowest dog, because by doing that, you will do a lot of more mind damage than anything. Because if you go faster than the dog can, remember, this is dog motorsports, so I can go as fast as I want. If you go faster than your slowest dog, that dog will get frustrated. That dog will not want to run, basically. So you don't want to do that. Sometimes it's a mind thing more than an ability thing. So huskies are known for being stubborn, but so we want to challenge them in different ways so they don't want to. They want to give it their all. They want to air it out at all times. So we got another question here. Karen. Hey, Karen, again. Your dogs look in great shape. What are their weights? Thanks so much for asking, Karen. So my dogs all hover in the 50-pound range, except for Lola. She's a big bone girl. I've lost some weight on her. She's a couch potato. So if I don't give her the physical regiment that I do, if we've got to miss it for a couple weeks, as being intense as we do, maybe it's too hot outside, I'll put her on the treadmill, whatever. But she still doesn't get the exercise. If we can't engage like she needs to do, she'll just lay around, and she gets a little bit of summer fat on her, for lack of a better description there. So she was at around 65 at her largest or heaviest. So I've got her down to about 59 right now. I'd like to still shed a few pounds on her. Now she looks fuller than she is because she's got a really thick coat of hair. They all do, but the way her hair lays, and she's got a lot of we call them guns, her hind legs. I mean, her butt, it's big because she's got a lot of power back there because of all the exercise we do. So that makes her look bigger too. But when you go to feel her ribs, you don't get as much definition as I do on some of the other dogs. And again, I always have the veterinarian check, and I've got a veterinarian scale, so I weigh her. She could still lose some of that weight. She's still not as trim as she needs to be. The other dogs, they balance their weight pretty well because when they're outside the house, they all engage. I'll find Lola just laying on the sofa. I have an outdoor sofa, indoor sofa, just laying there. Hi, Dad. What's up? So she's a couch potato. Some of that comes from spaying the dogs or neutering the dogs. They can get a little, change their hormone balance, and they can get a little more lazy, if you will. So the exercise is more important for them, the structured exercise, because around the house, they just don't run around as much. They don't engage with the other dogs. The other dogs go to wrestle with Lola. She wrestles for a couple minutes, and she's like, I'm done. And she just packs it in. So I appreciate that. So exact weights I'll give you. So Inyo, she's the all black dog. She actually could gain a little bit of weight. She's hovers between 42 and 44 pounds. She'd be good at 45, 46 pounds. I actually increased her diet because she's losing more weight. And again, that's because we're running a big schedule and their metabolism is all different. So just like a human. With Cyan, who's more of the gray wolf looking husky, she's got the blue eyes. She hovers at around 47 to 49 pounds. She's pretty much perfect weight. So her weight doesn't change at all, no matter how much I do with her, no matter how little we do. She keeps herself. She'll do, if you're familiar about steps for a dog, I use these GPS collars on them, Phi and Whistle. So she'll get 10,000 steps a day just in the yard, just walking back and forth. I mean, she messes with the other dog. She runs around. So her 10,000 steps a day keeps her going. If we don't do anything, if we're just hanging around the house, she does 10,000 steps usually. The other dog, Nikita, who is the brown-eyed, cocoa-colored husky, I call her, is actually maintains a weight of around 48, 49 pounds. And she's really thin, though. But her ribs, everything is just compact and perfect weight on her. She'll sometimes, now she's the most affected because she's not spayed either. Notice my two active dogs, Nikita and Cyan, are not spayed. They will be. But not being spayed keeps all their hormones going and keeps them more active, usually. Inyo and Cyan are both spayed. So Inyo is pretty active. She's still, I would call her still low energy, even though she's losing the weight. She's being more active because of the regiment and because of she likes it. But if you let her around the house, she'll be, come see, come saw. She won't get those 10,000 steps in that Cyan will get pretty much by just hanging out. She'll get 3,000-4,000 on her own, but she could you stand to gain a few pounds. So that's pretty much their weight balance. But Nikita, when she goes through her heat cycles, she gets really funny about eating, and those heat cycles can last 3 weeks. So sometimes I don't know if she actually I didn't really weigh her during the heat cycle, but she'll eat a lot less. So she'll be just as active if I take her to be active, if I give her the physical regimen we do. But around the house when she's on her heat cycle, she'll chill. So they should both be fixed this summer, Cyan and Nikita, and we'll see what that does to their engagement levels, how it fares. So I hope that answers your question. With other huskies in the past, my first husky, we're talking about diet, was Czar, CZAR. I got him in about 95. He was an all-white husky with blue eyes. And I fed him kibble. And he wound up being 95 pounds. Okay, so he was probably, it was unhealthy how overweight he got. And I was trying everything to get him to be less weight. He was a big boned dog also, like Lola, but he was probably, I think I got him down to, believe it or not, 70 pounds. He would eat everything and anything in between. So I'd give him more and more regimen. When I was just learning about everything I do. I changed over to the raw diet I talked about, and he lost those 20 pounds, even maybe a little more from what I recall. It was amazing. My veterinarian's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, we thought maybe something was wrong with him because he lost so much weight. He was way overweight. We knew that. But the veterinarian's like, you got to take some weight off him. All of a sudden, I switched him to this raw diet, and he just balanced out, and he was perfect. And he lived to 15 years old. So he adapted well to the raw diet. Back then, it got to be frozen towards 8-9 years old with him, but I was preparing for him at about 5-6 years old for a few years. Those were the years I started preparing, and then I got him over to the raw frozen diet, which was I was more sure to get more of the balance, and it wasn't as much time consuming for me, so I could do the more sports with him, etc. So good question on that. I know I always answer these questions with these long-winded answers, but keep in mind, again, I've done this so long, so I'm just trying to give you all my insight. The bike there, I just want to stress to you, is really interesting and fun, and I love being in the center. I'm really low down I'm basically, my eyes are just, my head is, I'm just one head above the dogs because I'm so low down. It's almost like I'm in a huddle with them. And I really enjoy being there because I can observe them real thoroughly. So I can notice how their tether is riding on them. So the tether tells me how, and the harness tells me how much they're engaging and how they're doing on our adventure. So when it's tight and fully, and the spring is bent going forward, I know they're really ready to go and they're engaged. When it's mid-level, I know their speed is about perfect for them. And when they're dropping back some, remember, never go faster than your slowest dog, then I know we're maybe going too fast for that dog. So I adjust my speed and I can do it instantaneously because I'm down on that level with them and can look to the right or left and they're in my peripheral vision. I know it's different than having the dogs in front, but it gives them a different variety, a different challenge, and it works different muscles, I believe, which helps them keep them enriched and keeps them as less injury prone as possible. And that's how we do it. My biggest thing is when I design these bikes, having a way to water the dogs as much as, keep them hydrated as much as they need and as much as they want, basically. So I have to always have proper water with me, and I have to have my bag with me where I have all my essentials, from basically a first aid kit to address anything that could happen on the trail. As I talked about, the nail wear. So I've got booties with me, and I've got a stick to stop bleeding if they would bleed from their nails. I've got a tourniquet, basically. If I couldn't stop the bleeding, I would use a tourniquet. Let me see. I always carry a thermometer with me that measures, not the dogs, but it's a laser thermometer to measure the surface temperature of the road or whatever we're mushing on. Always want to know that because they're creating friction through their pads, and any heat, even though I'm never going to take them in something that could burn their pads, but the friction they're creating with warmer temperatures creates a lot of heat because they breathe, they sweat through their pads. So they're breathing the heat, they're emitting the heat through their pads. And if it's creating friction, it's almost working in reverse and becoming more of a problem. So, okay, we've got a question here from Guthu02321. How much do you spend a month in your dog's diet? Oh boy. I can't say, because if my wife's listening, she might put me in the doghouse now. It's a hefty price. So I don't even want to say that I spend so much money. So I tried to calculate it before. The deal is I buy all my food. So I've got a couple commercial freezers. So I can buy my foods in case quantity, because when you buy them in case quantity, you're going to save a little bit of money. It's usually like 5%. It's not a huge savings, but when I'm buying the way I'm buying, it becomes a savings. So I range, my last calculation, about probably $2,500 a month. Now I'm feeding 5 dogs, but it could go a little more, because inside that food range is I use different chews for the dogs. So what I mean by chews are like bully sticks. Probably most people have heard of bully sticks. I use tendons. I use no hides, which are not raw hides. They're kind of the opposite. Who knows? But they seem to do well with my dogs. Everything I use is fully digestible. I don't give them any bones except for what's in the foods that I feed them, which is usually pulverized and cannot create bowel obstruction and can't pierce their bowels, because at least way less likely to, because it's all pulverized and very small. But I believe it provides the calcium, and there's a whole, and that's why foods are so complex. Like, what's the right diet for my dog? Because some veterinarians will say never give any dog any bone, even if it's pulverized, even small, it can create a blockage. There's truth to that. I've had that happen. I've had it happen in combination with feeding other bones. So I'm scared of bones, for lack of a better description there. But I do feed it in the food because I feel like it's an important aspect of their diet. And I've never had a bad experience feeding just the bones that are inside of the food. The others I use as chews, but I brought the chews up because they're super expensive. Bully sticks are like $10 a stick, the ones I feed them. So that becomes part of the expense for the diet. So I spend a lot of money on their diet, but I feel, again, it's one of the most important aspects. I know everybody can't afford to, but again, I'm feeding 4 athletic, adventurous huskies where I need to keep them well fed for the caloric intake to keep the weight on most of them, except for Lola, and for the different benefits that I've discussed here with their diet. So we've got another question here. Bonnie Hot. Hey, Bonnie, how are you? Damn, your dogs eat good. Thanks so much. They really do. The funny thing, the running joke in the WoofDriver world is one of my good friends and WoofDriver team members, WoofDriver pit crew guys, Danny. So he always says, he gets on there and people say, people see this and they just think the dogs are pulling me, and it's nothing more than that. And they're telling me how I abuse the dogs. And my friend Dan will get on there, Danny, and he'll say, I bet you his dogs eat better than your children. So there's a lot of truth in that. And my father, God rest his soul, would always say, I want to come back as one of your dogs. So they're my children, and that's the way I take care of them. But really, really funny on that is the Chinese crested I have that I talk about a lot, Gigi. I can bring her here one day. She's probably a little heavier than 14 pounds now. She's a toy breed. She eats pretty much the same diet as these guys. Their big issue with Chinese cresteds, they're usually, there's 3 different kinds of Chinese cresteds. There's hairy hairless, which means they have hair on their lower paws and on their head and some on their mane. They look like mini ponies. That's the kind I have. And their body has minimal hair, and you usually shave there when you groom it. Then there's full hairless ones, and then there's ones that look like full haired dogs. But with the Chinese cresteds, they're really prone to getting skin issues. And we feel the raw diet helps she still gets some. So I'm still trying, with all the different proteins and different manufacturers I use, I still try to find out. I think this green juju, that's the newest one I've been using, highly recommended from one of the people in the dog lovers that I know. And she says that helped with all her allergies and her dogs and skin issues, etc. So we've got another one. So Lewis 1750 Torres. Hey, Lewis, I hope I'm saying your name right. How fast can you go with them? So great question. So on most of my rigs, they can go around 20 miles per hour. That's our top sprint speed. Now, when they're off leash, we do different activities. We do something where they chase a flag. It's called lure coursing. I call it amazing chase. They could go almost up to 30 miles per hour. I've clocked some of my other huskies that fast, and that's about average husky top end speed, German Shepherd top end speed. When you get into greyhounds, you can talk 40 miles per hour plus sometimes. So great question there. So I hope everybody has enjoyed the show today. Once again, the video here is on the Atlantic County Bike Trail near Atlantic City, New Jersey. I'm using what I call the Speed Shark, and the dogs are running. They're actually walking in a different formation than you're used to seeing. And I thought it was going to be a little cooler yesterday. That's why we're going slower here. But it was warmer temperatures, and mainly the asphalt was not hot, but it was warm. So that means that it was perfectly fine. They're not going to burn themselves. I would never put them in that predicament. But it means they're going to create more heat as they go faster speed. So I kept them slower and just more of an adventurous walk, if you will. But that's what Dog Motorsports does for you, because they don't have to pull. They can simply walk along with the particular vehicles I use, and I can use the motor to propel us. Dogmotorsports.com, iFeedBarf, BARF.com, and please feel free, if you're watching this after the broadcast, to put down any questions, comments, shout outs, concerns, etc. And I can try to address them in the comment section of the social media you're watching me on. Or I try to broadcast once a week, usually between the 11 o'clock and noon hour on Tuesdays, mostly, sometimes Thursdays. Sometimes we miss a week here and there. And stay tuned for our dog documentary. I know I talk about it a lot. We hope to get that in circulation sometime soon. And we're doing a pilot show. We're editing through it now, which hopefully will get on one of the big channels. I'm WoofDriver. This week, really rainy all over our East Coast region where we go, where we can adventure at. So we'll go out in the rain sometimes. I've worked the dogs pretty good. Saturday, we did about, I think, 16 or 18 miles. 2 days before that, we had done 15, 16 miles. And yesterday, we did 8 miles in warmer temperatures, or close to 8 miles. So Wednesday's up in the air. I would usually go Wednesday, but because of the rain and because of their activity, what the current activities we've done, I might not go out in the wet. If I can find a dry spot, I would certainly go. We've missed some of the big farm action where they're out on the ATV and we're doing what I call dog roading. We've missed some of that because it's just been too hot. And if you can imagine, the farms are usually open fields. And with the heat, it's been borderline. So that means we're going to get less mileage in. And to get it all rigged together for that's not worth it. So we've been going to the more shaded trails, and we've been finding areas that have been relatively cool, except for yesterday. It was a little warmer, but that's why we've been able to get the mileage. So we've been trading off, and that's why I've got a whole array of activities I like to do with the dogs to constantly keep them as entertained psychologically and physically as possible, enriched. By the way, we're getting ready to finish up here. You can see my van in the distance. This is how we wrap up our day. So that's my van, and the driver in there, Chris P, we call him. He's fried. He's an electrician, so master electrician by trade, and that's how he handles all my electric bikes, Dog Motorsports. So he's waiting for me there. We were in communications through walkie-talkies and cell phones and everything else, and that's my van. And the dogs are coming in for a landing. We'll water them, and then we put them away. And Bonnie Hot. By the way, Chris tells me about dogs. The people saying bad stuff. Those dogs live better than most humans. They haven't a clue, and that's so true. Thanks so much, Bonnie, for the comment. That's so true. A lot of people are just they just constantly. It's not the same people all the time, but people. They get this mentality of there's, bad in everything. And there's people that that do sled dogs or have done them in the past that they've done stories about that don't treat the dogs well. And that's where that comes from. So this is a totally different thing. And I'm for the treating the dogs the best you can. Of course, you see that here. And they're my family, and they're all of our family, all people, all of us that have dogs. So I'm WoofDriver. Thanks so much for tuning in. Really appreciate the viewership and the comments, the questions, and everything in between. Hope to see you soon on coming up adventure. I'll keep posting, by the way, from some of the other adventures. Even I got so much material, I don't get a chance to post as much. I got some really epic stuff I hope to post soon, and I'll be on another adventure shortly. Have a great day, everybody. WoofDriver.